Look at how easy that was. Black people did not build America, and they do not deserve reparations. Thank you.
It never fails. Black people can be somewhere minding their own black-ass business, and some Neanderthalic, narcissistic, nauseating, nondescript, nefarious numbnut escapee from the Caucasus Mountains by way of ne'er-do-well will come along and try to bother our peace. So Casper the Friendly Ghost Hayden here decided to show us how easy it was to pick a whole bulb of cotton, knowing that his hyperallergenic to the sun ass would have stayed out there for more than 30 minutes, he would have been dead of skin cancer by the end of the year. See, Hayden, you made this video because you were laying at home and you realized that you were alone because 3 inches is not enough to get any job done that she needs done. Also, I wish your hyperallergenic to the sun, melon-deficiated ancestors would have thought picking cotton or tobacco was just as easy as you tried to make it seem. Because if they would have thought that, they would have tried to do it themselves. And then we wouldn't be sitting here now in the condition that this country is in with racial disparity, because all your ancestors would have already died out because of skin cancer. I said what I said, and you have the day your 3 inches brings you.
When white people in the United States balk at the idea of paying reparations to black Americans who descended from slaves, they disagree with the Bible. Reparations are a form of compensation or restitution made to those who have suffered injustice, particularly those in cases of racial inequality, discrimination, and slavery. The idea of paying reparations to black Americans is not a new one. It has been a topic of discussion for decades, if not centuries. However, it has gained renewed attention and support in recent years, following the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and the growing recognition of systemic racism in American society. As a Christian, I believe that reparations are not only a matter of justice and equity, but also a reflection of God's character and values. In the Bible, we see numerous examples of God's concern for the oppressed, the marginalized, and the downtrodden. From the Israelites' liberation from slavery in Egypt to the ministry of Jesus among the poor and the outcast, we see a consistent theme of God's love for those who are on the margins of society. One of the key biblical principles that underlie the idea of reparations is the concept of restitution. In the book of Leviticus, we see God commanding the Israelites to make restitution to those whom they have wronged. Leviticus 6:1-5 says, "If anyone sins and commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor or has found something lost and lied about it, swearing falsely in any of all the things that people do and sin thereby, if he has sinned and has realized his guilt and will restore what he took by robbery when he got it by oppression or deposit that was committed to him, or the lost thing that he found, or anything about which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore in full and shall add a fifth to it, and give it to him to whom it belongs on the day that he realizes his guilt." This passage emphasizes the importance of making restitution to those who have been wronged, and not just restoring what was taken, but adding to it as a form of compensation. This principle of restitution can be applied to the issue of reparations to black Americans who have suffered centuries of enslavement, discrimination, and systemic oppression. Another biblical principle that supports the idea of reparations is the concept of Jubilee. In Leviticus 25, God commands the Israelites to observe a Jubilee every 50th year, during which all debts are forgiven, all slaves to be set free, and all property to be returned to its original owners. This was a radical idea of economic justice designed to prevent the accumulation of wealth and power in the hands of a few, and to ensure that all members of society had equal access to resources and opportunities. The idea of Jubilee can be seen as a model for reparations in that it seeks to address the root causes of inequality and oppression rather than just treating the symptoms. By forgiving debts, freeing slaves, and returning property, Jubilee seeks to create a more just and equitable society, one in which everyone has the opportunity to flourish. As a Christian, I believe paying reparations to Black Americans is only a matter of justice and equity, but also it is a reflection of God's values and character. Through the biblical principles of restitution and Jubilee, we see a model for how we can address the historical and systemic injustices that have plagued our society for far too long. While the issue of reparations is complex and contentious, I believe that as Christians, we have a responsibility to seek justice.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, Africans. I hope you're doing fine where you are, and if you ain't doing fine, please do fine where you are. You know, we are living in those times when truths are being exposed. No stone shall go unturned. Those are the times we are living in. And the Bible calls it the end times, right? And in these end times, there's things we can't go without discussing, such as the way slavery was conducted, how brutal it was, because history books might not tell us exactly how it happened, but we've had some revelations from people who have maybe had a one-on-one experience with people who experienced it, people who went through slavery itself. It's true that slavery took place 400 years ago, you know, since the first slave ship left Cape Coast Castle, that is in Ghana, right? But now I'm looking back and I'm thinking, yes, we can never ever bring back those who are enslaved. There is no way we can tell them sorry right now, right? Because it is because of slavery that today we have problems, racial problems in the United States of America, right? It is because of racism that people are experiencing police brutality, the shootings, and this thing has even gotten into the government itself. The government is perpetrating what we call systemic racism, where racism is at its best, right? Or in its highest form or purest form. From that, we have individual racism, racism which has cultivated itself as a result of systemic racism, right? So I think that the consequences of slavery can never, ever be undermined, right? It wasn't just about picking cotton. It wasn't about that. It was about emotional pain, leave alone the physical pain. It was about breaking of cultures. It was about breaking of traditions, right? And I'm here right now and I'm thinking the least the perpetrators or the ancestors of the perpetrators can do is offer an apology in form of reparations. That is what I think they should do. Because there is no money which can bring back those people. Of course, they're long gone. And there's no money which can wipe the tears that has been caused by this slavery. So a white man just came forward and did the unthinkable, right? He was, I repeat, he was picking cotton and saying that picking cotton ain't hard, that black people should not ask for an apology. You know, there is something fundamentally wrong with this kind of thinking. Something is fundamentally wrong with it. You see, it wasn't just about picking cotton. It was about emotional pain, right? It was about the unseeable. It was an inner thing as compared to the outside. The inner was more disastrous than the outside, right? So I want us to dive into this video, listen to this man explain why he thinks that black people should not be compensated. I shall get back by the end of the video where we shall also have a deep critical analysis. Let's dive in.
So we're talking about the demoggification of America, which will happen one day, I hope. And I'll make special note that the MAGA people have really enjoyed this series so far. And they'll like today too. Part 5 of the things we should do is financial reparations. Now, I realize this is a very complicated subject, but we should pay reparations for anyone who's been harmed by slavery in the last 400 years, which means if you're the descendant of a slave, you should receive reparations. And I'll make note that a lot of people have called out Native Americans. I agree, they still are due more. They have received some reparations, not enough. The Japanese who were interned during World War II received $20,000 apiece. Not enough, but at least it was something from the government to make the apology mean something and to make it hurt, which it should. And I will aver that we will not, as a country, ever psychologically heal from the wound of slavery until we pay reparations. Now, let's talk about numbers. There are roughly 44 million black people in the United States, and about 90% of them can prove that they are descended from slaves. So if we were to give every single one of those people who can prove they're descended from a slave a $10,000 tax-free check, we are talking about about $400 billion. That's less than 6% of our annual federal budget. And it would be a one-time thing. Now, $10,000 is not compensation. It's not enough to actually cover for the damages done by slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, redlining, the institutionalized racism in our justice system, and the myriad of other things that black people have experienced. So it's not compensation. It is simply a gesture to say, man, we were wrong and we are very sorry, and this hurts, but here you go. By the way, as a side note, this would probably be an incredible stimulus to our economy. Now, a lot of white people are going to react to this. They're going to complain, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. We need to recognize the privilege that we've gotten as a white, cisgendered, heterosexual male. I have had an enormous amount of privilege in my life that I didn't really recognize until the last 10 years or so. I have not had to work as hard as my black coworkers to get to the level of success that I have achieved. Has that been worth $10,000? Quite possibly. And we can't just mail people a check. It should come with a certificate of apology from the U.S. government with possibly the names of the people who were enslaved and the names of the slaveholders who owned them. It would be a meaningful thing that could be framed and hung in someone's house. And there should be a ceremony that is optional for anyone to attend where they can be given this from a government official. Because we need to be ashamed of our history, and we need to express that shame in something that is meaningful and painful. And until we do, that shame is going to express itself as resentment and hatred. And once we do this and hold ourselves accountable, we can lock arms, black and white, and move forward together proudly. Many people in my comments have said it's too late to do this. No, it's not. We should have done it how long ago? 100 years ago? 150 years ago? And it's not too late, and we have to do it, or else movements like the Trump movement are going to continue happening. Because racism hurts all of us, even us white people, and we should make sure that the South never rises again.
So I did a video where I advocated for reparations for African Americans who are descended from slaves, and surprisingly, almost all the feedback was pretty positive. I guess it didn't make it over to MAGA Talk. So there is this question here, though, which is basically, if we were going to do that, where would the money come from? And that's one of the impediments. A lot of people think, well, we just can't possibly afford to pay that. Now, the question becomes value anyway, right? But I want to make the case right now that money is not the issue. Being able to pay reparations to every African American who is descended from slavery is possible. The money could be paid. The question is how much. So I want to run through one example of how this could be done just to prove that it's absolutely possible. I'm not saying this is the right formula. I'm just saying it's a formula that shows that this is possible. So let's do a little math. It's not going to be that complicated. I'm going to use some rounded off numbers because I'm not trying to be precise here. I'm just trying to show that this can absolutely be done. So let's start with the population of black people who are Americans. That number as of 2023 was about 48 million people. But we can't use that full number as our population that we need to be paying reparations to because, of course, some black people here, their ancestors were not enslaved. Others, maybe moved here from Africa, from Nigeria, from Uganda, from Ghana, or wherever, or from the UK. Their ancestors were not enslaved. They should be excluded from this because that's not what we're trying to repair. We're trying to repair the family lineage for those whose families were enslaved. And so we need to narrow it down. So I don't know how reliable this is, but I saw it in a couple different places saying that 57% of black Americans claim that their ancestors were enslaved. I'm going to use that again. I don't know how accurate it is, but let's just use that number. And so if we take that 48 million number and take 57% of that, that gives us a total population of 27,360,000 people. So that's our population. And I'm comfortable enough to use that number just for this process. But then we have to figure out money. How much money could the United States possibly throw at something that they wanted to repair? Well, we have one recent example, and I'm just going to use that number. Do y'all remember COVID happened a few years back? Kind of a big story. There was a program that the United States government put out called the PPP program, or the Paycheck Protection Program. Do you remember that? I bet you do. The United States, at the drop of a hat, when they wanted to, set aside $793 billion for the PPP program. And so if we do just one more equation and we take that $793 billion and we divide it by the 27,360,000 people we have in our class of people, that provides about $29,000 to each person in that group. And again, I don't know that that's right. Clearly, that's not enough if we actually do the economics behind what was lost through slavery. So please don't come for me on that. I'm not saying this is the right number. I'm saying that if we can, at the drop of a hat, drop $793 billion, double it, and pay everybody $60,000. That might not be the right number, but it proves that it absolutely can be done if we wanted to do it. But of course, before we ever discuss value on the topic of reparations, we got to get more people on board with the concept that it's fair, right, decent, and long overdue.
When white people in the United States balk at the idea of paying reparations to black Americans who descended from slaves, they disagree with the Bible. To begin with, let's first define what reparations mean. Reparations are a form of compensation or restitution made to those who have suffered injustice, specifically in cases of racial inequality, discrimination, and slavery. The idea of paying reparations to black Americans is not a new one. It has been a topic of discussion for decades, if not centuries. However, it has gained renewed attention and support in recent years. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. also advocated for reparations in the form of economic advancement for black Americans. As a Christian, I believe that reparations are not only a matter of justice and equality, but also a reflection of God's character. In the Bible, we see numerous examples of God's concern for the oppressed, the marginalized, and the downtrodden. From the Israelites' liberation from slavery in Egypt to Jesus' ministry among the poor and the outcast, we see a consistent theme of God's love for those who are on the margins of society. One of the key biblical principles that underlie the idea of reparations is the concept of restitution. In the book of Leviticus, we see God commanding the Israelites to make restitution to those whom they have wronged. Leviticus chapter 6 says that if anyone sins and commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor or found something lost and lied about it, swearing falsely, he shall restore it in full and shall add a fifth to it and give it to him to whom it belongs. This passage emphasizes the importance of making restitution to those who have been wronged, and not just restoring what has been taken, but adding to it as a form of compensation. This principle of restitution can be applied to the issue of reparations to black Americans who have suffered centuries of enslavement, discrimination, and systemic oppression. Another biblical principle that supports the idea of reparations is the concept of jubilee. In Leviticus chapter 25, God commands to the Israelites to observe a jubilee. This was a radical idea of economic justice designed to prevent the accumulation of wealth and power in the hands of a few and to ensure that all members of society had equal access to resources and opportunities. The idea of Jubilee can be seen as a model for reparations in that it seeks to address the root causes of inequality and oppression rather than just treating the symptoms. By forgiving debts, freeing slaves, and returning property, Jubilee seeks to create a more just and equitable society, one in which everyone has the opportunity to flourish. As a Christian, I believe that paying reparations to Black Americans is not only a matter of justice and equity, but also a reflection of God's character and values. Through the biblical principles of restitution and Jubilee, we see a model for how we can address the historical and systemic injustices that have plagued our society for far too long. While the issue of reparations is complex and contentious, I believe that as Christians, we have a responsibility to seek justice.
You know, when I came to America newly, I used to think African Americans are lazy. They don't want to work and all that. You will never understand the struggle of African Americans until you live in the system for 5 years. Then you understand that being Black in the system is already playing you 10-0. Like you are 10 steps behind. The schools in Black neighborhoods, they are all underfunded. The only thing you can find anywhere, everywhere in Black neighborhood is liquor store. Keep drinking and keep yourselves busy. Now I understand why everybody is fighting so much to live in white neighborhood. Before I used to say they are not proud of their skin color. They don't love who they are. But they're actually fighting for their children's future. Because being Black in the system is already playing you 10-0. You are 10 steps behind. Is it you that is coming with underfunded certificates that want to be competing with somebody that is 10 steps ahead of you? Being Black in the system is tough. You see, African Americans and Africans, we are all the same. Let us not be distracted. We are all the same. The only difference is that one is living in America, the other one is coming from Africa. Let's support each other's business. If you see your brother trying to make ends meet, support his business. You get to the point now. Peace and love.
You know, if America ever gave Black people reparations, most of that money would end up in the wrong hands anyway. Drug dealers, extortionists, liquor store owners, and the legal system. Now, after most of these people get their clothes, shoes, and cars, they're going to go out and buy the best drugs they can find. Addiction and overdose is going to be through the roof. And then after they hit the club and buy a bunch of bottles or buy half the liquor store, they're going to be having kickbacks and parties with a bunch of people that they don't like or even know. They're going to be hanging around family members they don't even get along with, getting drunk, fighting, hurting, shooting each other. And then people gonna need to bond out of jail, pay lawyer fees, pay fines. And then on top of that, a lot of them gonna be getting extorted by gang members, by they no good, having kids for government aid ass parents, or they domestically violent boyfriends. Everybody don't need money is all I'm saying. Maybe a third of Black folks need some money. Another third of them need education. And the last third of them just need opportunities. Because if you give us all some money, it'd probably be one of the worst things that ever happened to the Black community, honestly.
Do you support reparations for Black people?
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination and segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, Black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of Black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country, right?
So guys, after listening to this gentleman give his thoughts, give his voice about slavery, about reparations, you can clearly tell that not all white people share their same opinion, right? Some of these whites are grieving together with the blacks. You know, they are now recognizing the pain of being oppressed. They are now realizing that being black ain't easy, right? Particularly these times of Trump. These Trump times with effing around and finding out. You see, all these things these people are finding out are things that is the lifestyle of black Americans. We are used to the tariffs. We are used to not getting loans. We are used to not getting workers on our lands. We are used to not getting Medicaid. We are used to, name it all, bad education, bad health, racism in the workplace, name it all, right? So we've always been living this, and now they are now experiencing this through Trump. Maybe God made them see the life of a black person in their own perspective, right? Now they understand. And that's why I think that some of them also are coming up front and speaking about racism and speaking about black oppression. And now they want the togetherness. They want people to come forward and to speak for one another. They want that which I call reconciliation, a genuine one. They want a genuine reconciliation because now they're recognizing the importance of being a black, or rather the importance of being black in America. There are things which can only be done by blacks and no one else but blacks. And so black people should not be mistreated according to them, right? So back to the topic of reparation. Reparation is the payment you make after wronging someone, right? Or rather after long years. In this perspective, it is long years of slavery. And families were broken. Some people were killed. Many, actually, I believe in millions, were killed, right? And I'm sitting back right now and I'm thinking, those people were people's parents, they were people's brothers, they were people's sisters, they were people's children that lost their lives. Entire generations were wiped out. People who could have existed did not exist because of these so-called slavery, right? So I'm back here right now and I want to convince you, white person who is watching this, reparation is like restoration. Reparation is like repentance. Reparation is correcting your wrongs. You see, God says, if you have wronged your brother and you've come to my place with all the offerings, leave the offerings in the altar or whatever place. But he says that leave them, go back and make it right between you and your brother. Your brother here means both your sister, brother, means the society, right? And so, there is no way some white people can claim that they are saved, that they are Christians, and they do not want reparations. I find it hard to believe and sometimes to trust in Jane Elliott because she speaks so well of black people, but she's against reparations, that does not sit well with me, because I believe restoration is a way of asking for forgiveness. Reparation is, first of all, you acknowledge wrong was done, and yes, you must pay for that. It might be money, it might be a piece of land, maybe an acre, maybe a mule, but you understand that an acre and a mule was both literal and metaphorical, right? Yes. Whichever way, reparations must always be paid. And when reparations are paid, people live in harmony, and there's a sense of importance. People feel respected and loved wherever they are. Yes. That is my thoughts. You may want to share your thoughts on the comment section. I may want to hear from you as well. Share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll surely appreciate, and see you in the next one.